Phone versus camera. Which is better to take photos with? Hi, and a very warm welcome to episode 181 of the Photography Explained podcast. Episode 181, blimey. I'm your host, Rick, and in each episode, I will try to explain one photographic thing to you in plain English in less than 27 minutes-ish, without the irrelevant details. I'm a professionally qualified photographer based in England with a lifetime of photographic experience, which I share with you in my podcast. How nice, eh? Here is the answery bit. Cameras are, of course, designed to take high-quality photos. But phone cameras have improved so much that they are a credible alternative to cameras. But which is better to take photos with? A digital camera or a phone? Is one better than the other? Or is there a place for both? Okay, that's the answering bit, and here are a few things to think about, because it's not that simple, is it? The answer to most questions in photography is, it depends. So I'm going to go through those few things right now, starting with image quality. You can get higher quality images with a camera than you can with a phone. There you go, I've said it. I've got it out of the way right at the start. I mean, I might as well do, eh? For my photography, image quality is my priority. And that's my priority, not number one priority, because there can only be one priority if you look at the actual meaning of the word. It's a long process from taking a photo to issuing it to someone paying you money for that photo. And what is the important thing in that process? What's the one thing that matters? The only important thing? It's the quality of the photos, isn't it? Nothing else matters. Well, things do matter, but they only matter in the context of producing the highest quality photo. So picture quality, that is what I'm bothered about. I'm bothered about what somebody else is looking at. They're not interested in all the things that have happened along the way. They don't care if you took the photo with a camera or with a phone. What they care about is the quality of what they're looking at. So that is always my starting point, the highest quality image capture, and that has to be consistently high quality image capture as well. My photos need to have the same standards and look and feel from shoot to shoot to shoot, because I do repeat jobs for the same architects and organisations. So I need that consistency of quality. And well, I'll get on to how I do that. Actually, I'll stop trying to ad-lib here. There is a script, you know. Moving on, sensor technology and size. Now, generally, the larger the sensor, the more data you capture, resulting in higher quality images. That's generally, of course it is. Cameras have larger sensors than phones. Well, of course they do. You wouldn't expect them to not do, would you? But smartphone camera sensors are pretty amazing too. Now, computational photography, it can make the two look as good as each other, but is that what you want? Do you want automated electronic enhancement, or do you just want the highest quality image capture? That's the fundamental question for me. Okay, a few more things. Resolution. My iPhone has a 48 megapixel sensor. It's utter madness. My Canon 6D is a full-frame DSLR. It has a 20 megapixel sensor. But that does not mean my phone gives me more than double the resolution, not in real terms. In theoretical terms it does, but not in actual terms, because there's stuff happening in phones, things that it's doing to the pixels, and it means that you can't make that direct comparison. And I maintain a camera will give you better resolution than a phone. Ooh, I'm looking forward to the feedback on this and my big bold claims here. No, long gone are the days when quality was all about more megapixels. There was a time when pixel count was a thing, and the more the better, but it got to a point and it was around the 20 to 40 megapixels, because we were going from 1248, it was going nuts, and there was talk of ridiculously high megapixel cameras, but it's settled down now. So I prefer my high quality pixels, the ones that my Canon 6D creates. They're good for me. There's a phone that takes 200 megapixel images apparently. It's bonkers. I mean, it's bonkers in a fantastically amazing way, but it is still utterly bonkers. And if you go back, I don't know, 10, 15 years, That would have never seemed possible. My iPhone 15 Pro, 48 megapixels. That is madness. It is absolute madness. It's incredible. How did they do it? Right, I need to move on, don't I? Size and weight. Well, obviously, a phone is much more convenient. Yep, it's smaller, it's lighter, and it's always with you. And cameras, yep, they're larger, they're heavier, they're bulkier, and they're less convenient. And as the old cliche goes, the best camera is the one that you have with you. But when we think about handling, I don't like taking photos with my phone, but I do love taking photos with my camera. And this is one of the reasons I don't care about the size and the weight. I just don't. I mean, yeah, every now and then I get a bit fed up with it, but no, I enjoy my camera. Thinking about this, we use our phones for so many things these days. I mean, so many things day-to-day wise, and those are all good things. They're all brilliant things. I'm not anti-phones, far from it. I have an iPhone 15 Pro and it's brilliant. It's amazing. But it means that I love taking photos even more with my camera now than I ever have done because I use my phone for so many other things. It feels right to me, and I can't get the photos I need to with my phone. Now, when I'm using my camera, it feels like I'm taking photographs, and it's a conscious, deliberate thing, and it's the thing I love to do. But when I'm taking photos with my phone, it's just I'm just taking a photo. I'm just lifting my phone up and, well, I'm not clicking a button, I'm touching the bit on the front. It's not the same for me. So it might surprise you that I'm not a huge fan of smartphone photography. I'm just not. And I have to shoehorn in smartphone photography there because I can't just be Apple only, because there's a much broader market out there than Apple who I don't want to alienate or ignore. So no, I'm not a huge fan of smartphone photography. I just don't enjoy it as much as I do photography with my camera. And that is my reality. Okay, photos and videos. Phones can capture still photos, as we used to call them, and videos. Still photos are what we used to call them, but these days, they're not, are they? Because I take a photo with my iPhone and I can go forwards I don't know how it works. I can go forwards for about 2 seconds before I took the photo or something like that. Now, cameras can, of course, capture videos as well as photos, but this point of photos and videos, it made me think, and yeah, I've taken well over 50,000 photos with my Canon 6D, but I've only ever recorded one video. And it was on a beach, actually, and it was a video of the waves lapping on some rocks on the Greek island of Paxos. So yeah, I've only recorded one video on my Canon 6D, but I've been using my phone to take videos for years. And the video quality just gets better with updates in tech and all that good stuff. And this is going to become a recurring theme in this episode. So, yeah, just bear that one in mind. Immediacy. Do you need your photos right away? I don't. My clients don't, so it's not an issue. And I'm not interested in sharing stuff on social media. So, not an issue to me, but if you do, then the phone could be the right choice for you, and that's fine. Okay, a biggie for me. Do you want all the complicated stuff to be done for you when you create a photo? Like I say, this is a biggie. What involvement do you want to have in the creation of a photo? Are you happy that the software determines how an image is captured and how it's processed? Are you happy that the tech is digitally enhancing the content of your photos to give you the best results? Now, of course, this has been going on for years with JPEG picture format. Every JPEG photo taken has been processed before you see it in camera. And this is processing beyond the creation of the digital file from light reaching the sensor, that is. And I take photos in RAW where the only processing is making the photo out of it. I've got to do all the work to the base data myself. But when we're talking phones, this is done to another level. Done with a photo taken with a phone than a JPEG taken with a camera, much more done. And this is compensating for the phone's physical constraints, amongst other things. I mean, the size of the lens. Think of the size of a phone and the size of the lens. Yeah, there's 3 lenses on my iPhone there, but they're tiny compared to a camera lens. Of course they are. And the sensor size, you've got to get a sensor into a phone. So tech is being used to compensate for the difference and the constraints of just the sheer size of a phone and all the other stuff going on in it. And that's how they are so amazing. And there's also artificial intelligence, but I don't really want to get into that here. That's one for another time. Because I'm talking the other end of things, the other end from artificial intelligence, which I might do an ad-lib on later. Ad-lib warning. So, do you want computational photography to take over your image creation? Or are you of the view of the less computational stuff, the better? Do you want to control the taking and processing of your photos? Do you want to choose the camera settings to get the image capture you want and then process the base data yourself? You know, I'm talking about aperture, shutter speed, focal length, depth of field, all that good stuff. Now, if you do, in my opinion, a camera is your best option. It is. I mean, I use a specific technique to determine the range of lights and darks I capture in a photo, which is also known as the dynamic range. And it's something that I consciously do. So I'm controlling that. And that's one of the ways I get consistency of my photos from one shoot to the next. And I'm not talking specifically here about manual control using manual mode. I'm talking about being completely aware of the camera settings I'm using when I take a photo. And I want creative control of the photos I'm creating as well. I'm not saying everything has to be done manually, but you can use semi-automatic settings when you know what's going on, when you're having a say in how the photo is created. And that's what sets photographers apart from other people, that human input into the taking and processing of photos. Right, this was a thought that came to me while I was writing the script. Photography genres. Well, some genres are suited for phones and others aren't. Here's a few that sprang to my mind. These are extremes of a range, really. Street photography. Now, isn't the phone the perfect tool for this? Street photographers might shoot me down for this. If you do, I've got nothing against street photography. I'm not trying to belittle you for 1 second, but if you want to take photos out and about without people noticing, surely a phone's ideal, isn't it? As everybody else has got a phone, so nobody had noticed. And we folks with cameras, we stand out even more these days, don't we? Because everybody's taking photos with phones. Not that many people are taking photos with cameras. Just a thought. Right, next genre, architectural photography, and I'll talk about me here. Architectural photography, real estate photography, construction photography, photographing buildings. Now, I've tried to take photos of buildings with my phone, but I cannot get the compositions I want, and it doesn't matter how amazing my iPhone is. It's not as Canon 6D for what I do. It just doesn't work for me, and I'm fine with that. Okay, so let's go to the other extreme, motorsport photography. Can you photograph motorsport with a phone? To a degree, yes, but you will get better photos with a camera. And I'm more than happy with that one because phones are not quick enough, the focal lengths aren't long enough, and when you get into digital zoom territory, it's nowhere near as good. So these are examples where a phone is an appropriate device to take photos with and isn't. And it's specific to what you're taking photos of. So it's one to bear in mind, isn't it? Well, on my script to say, there you go, I snuck that one in. I'm not really sure what that means. Low light photography. Small sensors are not as good at capturing low light scenes. Phones have been notoriously bad at this in the past, and I've taken loads of nighttime shots and they've just had so much noise they've been completely unusable. But that's much less the case these days with the advances in the tech. But the sensors are still so small, and there's other stuff happening which I referred to before, which I don't want to get into now, to make the photos look okay. Now, I want to use the camera settings and the equipment that I have to get the highest quality, authentic, low light image captures. And I'm talking here about still using a low ISO, ideally 100, and just having a shutter speed long enough to get the correct exposure. And of course, to do that, my camera's on a tripod. Rather than using all the tech in the world to capture all that light, just do what we have done before. Now, you might call me old-fashioned for thinking that, but I'm fine with that. Photography gear. Do you love photography gear? Now, some people do, some do not. And this might be an issue if you've only ever taken photos with a phone. I get that. As for me, I don't have a lot of gear, and what I have, I'm going to be completely honest with you, I love using it. All right, love might be a strong term, but it's not far off, to be fair. My gear, it's my tools. It's the tools that I use to create photos, and I could not be without each item of gear. I've mentioned in previous episodes, I'll just touch on it again here. I used to have loads of gear. Now I only have stuff that I actually need and use. I've got rid of everything else. So I haven't got a lot of gear. And you'll find that every professional photographer has got specific gear that they use for specific reasons. But if you've got a phone and you look at people weighed down with all that photography gear and you just shake your head and don't get it, I understand entirely. That's how I feel sometimes when I just got my phone. And I know that camera bodies are bulky and that phones aren't, and that phones have got multiple lenses built in, it's much more convenient than interchangeable lenses for sure. But the photography gear I have helps me to take the photos I take, and I cannot get those photos with my phone. I think I've said that enough times now, haven't I? And I touched on it before. I prefer an optical zoom with its known quality over a digital zoom, which can go pear-shaped if you're not careful. I'm sure the tech's making it better than it used to be, but... Oh, message coming in. I'll just have to stop for 1 second. The taking photos bit. As good as my iPhone is, I don't like taking photos with it anywhere near as much as I do with my Canon 6D. And I don't see that changing. The experience is completely different and much more enjoyable with my camera and lens. No, DSLR cameras, mirrorless cameras, well, cameras would have done, wouldn't it? Yes, it would, Rick. They've been designed to take photos with, and it shows. I might be in a huge minority on this, but that's where I am. I don't like taking photos with my phone. One of my problems is, this isn't in my script, when it's sunny, I can't see the screen, even on my iPhone 15 Pro. But when I look through the viewfinder of my Canon 6D, I can see everything perfectly. There you go. That's one justifiable difference. Let's not forget, mobile phones have been designed to be all things to all people at all times, anywhere. So the comparison's hardly fair, is it anyway? Can you get photos that are good enough with a phone? Another important question. I've written blog posts about good enough on my Rick McAvoy Photography website. That's rickmcavoyphotography.com, by the way. Shameless plug. Well, it's my podcast, isn't it? So why not? If the photos you take... No, if the photos you take with your camera phone are good enough for your needs, then that's fine. If they're not good enough, get a camera. It really is that simple. So ask yourself that question and answer it honestly. Right, the talky bit. This is one of those things I could talk about for days on end, but none of us want that, do we? Of course you don't. So I'm restricting myself to the first things that came into my head when I started to think about this, and one other thing, and it's this. How did you get into photography, and where do you want to go with your photography? This will have a massive influence on your perception of phones and cameras. If you got into photography using your phone, that might be all you've ever known, and that's fine, of course it is. And the proportion of people who get into photography using the phones, it's only going to increase, isn't it? It's not going down. And there will come a time, we might have reached that point some time ago, when everyone first gets into photography with the phone. Actually, I'm sure we're there now thinking about it. I can't I can't see many scenarios where someone gets into photography first with a camera and then with a phone. It's not going to happen, is it? And that is the reality in 2024. And if you're happy with the photos you get with your phone, then great. And for many people, that will be the case. But if it's all you've ever known, you won't know what it's like to take photos with a camera. So you don't know what you're missing out on. And I do feel that if you haven't used a camera and you want to get into photography, you are missing out on so much. I'll come on to that in a minute. So if you want to get the most out of your photography, my advice is to move on from a phone and get a camera and lens and all that other stuff that comes with it. Don't get all the other stuff, by the way. Just get stuff that you need and get it one piece at a time. I know there will be people who do not agree with me, and I'm fine with that. That's my opinion based on my experiences. But people who never progress beyond taking photos with phones, they don't know what they're missing out on, and that, I am happy to say, is a fact. And I feel so strongly about this that I'm just going to cover that in the next episode. I'm changing the title from what it was to that. Right, let's move on, Rick. What if I use my phone to take photos and not a camera? I think I've covered that, haven't I? Oh no, one more thing. Yeah, I think I touched on it before. Comparing a phone and a camera to a camera is just not fair, is it? We shouldn't expect a camera in a phone to be as good as a camera. And fair play to all the phone manufacturers for doing the amazing work that they do, and it is amazing. What do? I use a full-frame camera, a Canon DSLR with a wide-angle lens for most of my photos of buildings, and that's my primary camera. I also have a Micro Four Thirds Olympus Olympus camera and use wide-angle and telephoto lenses for my travel photography work. I take all my photos in RAW and edit them in Lightroom. And I very rarely edit photos taken with my phone. That's another difference I've noticed. I use my phone for day-to-day photos, snaps if you like, as we used to call them. And I also use the camera to record general information. You know, see something in a shop that you like, just take a photo. You got a nice little reminder, haven't you? And when you get to my age, you need a bit of help remembering stuff as well. But I take all my commercial photos for clients with my camera, and that is without exception. But I record all my videos on my phone or using a webcam on my computer for the podcast videos. I need to add that one in there because that's changed. This is what I do, and I don't see this changing anytime soon. I really don't. And that's with me owning an iPhone 15 Pro. I mean, it's an amazing phone. It's got an amazing camera. But it's still not the same as taking photos with my 10-year-old Canon 6D. Sorry, Apple. I feel like I'm letting you down there, but that's where I am. Right then, so what's the answer to the question, Rick? This look into the script in this episode, and I might just keep it in there. It's like a little recap, if you like. Which is better to take photos, phone or camera? My camera is better for some photos, and my phone is better for others. So my answer is both, for different photos taken for different reasons, at different times, in different circumstances. So what's your answer? Well, seamlessly, I've moved on to a survey that I've got. I have set up a survey on this subject, on this very question of phones and cameras, and I'd really appreciate it if you completed the survey, which will take, well, at the time of writing and recording this episode, it says it'll take 2 minutes of your time, but it might take a bit more time now because I'm going to add some more questions. So I'm happy to stick my neck out and say it won't take you any more than 5 minutes. Just head over to photographyexplainedpodcast.com/survey 2024. There's a link on the blog post on the website, photographyexplainedpodcast.com. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run the survey for a couple of months and then I'll come back to it in a future episode. So if you are going to help me out with this one, thank you in advance. Right, some thoughts from the last episode. Oh, it was 38 minutes long. And the one before that was 46 minutes long. I need to get back to my 27-ish minutes, don't I? That's a long old time listening to me waffling on, and And it's a long time for me editing all the rubbish out. Yes, what you hear is the good stuff. So there's just two things I wanted to pick up on. The first was viewfinders. I mentioned it before. If you take photos with a phone, you don't have a viewfinder. And you're missing out, and I'm going to cover this in the next episode. This is part of the reason for the next episode. And the other thing was, from the last episode, it was camera shake on a tripod. Now, if you lovingly secure your camera to a tripod, you get all your settings sorted, you're good to take a photo, and then you clumsily stab the shutter button, you're going to get camera shake even with your camera on a tripod. And that's why I use the camera self-timer. Just saying. I should have picked that one up last episode. Right, next episode. Learn from your photos and other photographers. Well, that's what it was going to be, but as I said, I've changed that to something along the lines of what you're missing out on if you use a phone instead of a camera. Yep, I'm going to get some reaction to that. I know I am, because it's a slightly controversial view I have on this. I could have covered it in this episode, but there's a lot more I want to say, and we don't want 45, 50, 60 minutes of me, do we? No, we don't. So the title's to be decided, but that's the kind of thing I'm going to talk about in episode 182. Ask me a question. If you have a question you would like me to answer, email me at sales@rickmcavoyphotography.co.uk. or head over to the podcast website, photographyexplainedpodcast.com/start. And if you check out the questions page, there's a big list of things you can choose from, which I updated a couple of weeks ago. And if you just want to say hi, say hi. Just do that. I'd love to hear from you. Right, get an email from me. Would you like to receive a weekly email from me where I tell you what I'm thinking about? Well, why wouldn't you, eh? Fill out the form on the podcast website, and every Friday you'll get a lovely email from me. I send them out 3 p.m. on a Friday, time where I'm sat. Right, I'm done. And yeah, it's not a 38-minute epic, I'm delighted to say. This episode was brought to you by a homemade tuna sandwich washed down with water before I settled down in my homemade acoustically cushioned recording emporium. Easy for you to say, Rick. No crisps, I'm back to being good. I've been Rick McAvoy. Thanks again very much for listening to my small but perfectly formed podcast, it says here, and for giving me 27-ish minutes of your valuable time. Now, I think this episode will be around 25 minutes long after I've edited out the mistakes and other bad stuff. Thanks for listening. I hope to see you on the next episode. Take care, stay safe. Cheers from me, Rick. My brand new course, How to Become a Real Estate Photographer, straight talking advice for beginners to get you making money quickly and build a career, is available to buy now. Find out more at rickmcavoyphotography.com/courses.